What's up, YouTube? Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today I'm looking at some DAX or on Saul's lot. The property is 7711 Rangoon Street in Detroit, Michigan. It's a fourplex. This one's a little bit different. If you've watched any of the Saul's lot videos I've done before, the typical exit strategy for these is we're buying a piece of equity in the property. Property is going to be sold, and then once it's sold, we get paid off at a set amount. This is a similar. The transaction itself is the same, but the exit strategy is different. The plan is this is being renovated when it's complete. The plan is to refinance out, our piece of equity that we bought. Um, Makes it a little bit more risky in my mind. The refinance is it's going to be a little bit more dependent on a business plan than just getting the property sold. Um, I think obviously the backup plan would be to have to foreclose and sell it, or maybe if the borrower or sponsor doesn't have the ability to refinance, maybe they just sell it on their own, and we wouldn't have to use the performance mortgage, which is what we have. That's what gives us the ability to um, exercise our interest in the property, right? So, a couple of things. So, the you just click on the more details, and then that gets you here. You can click on the view all documents, and that's what's actually gets you to this one with all the info. We do have an appraisal I'm going to go through in a minute, but just to go over the transaction in general, this is the appraised value, and this is a little bit different than some of the others. This is a as complete appraised value because there's work to be done. There's a schedule of the work that needs to be done. I think actually on that other details tab we could see, here that there's already a current mortgage for 211,000, and then what we are not lending, but the equity that they're selling to us is 52,845. This is one that has a decent, it's a 15% return is what's expected, and that's regardless of how long it takes. For this deal where it's a little bit different, I think what I'd really love to see on the website is a description of the sponsor, or what the business plan is as far as what needs to be done before they'll be able to refinance. As far as like, okay, what they need to be rented for. Do those, can they refinance the minute those four properties, four tenants are in there, or is the lender going to look for any sort of trailing numbers before they'd refinance, that sort of thing. Uh, we have the benefit of having Matt and Matt is one of the founders of Saul's Lot. He's in our Discord. Before I forget, please like and subscribe. In the description of this video, I have a link to the Discord that I have set up where we talk about all different fractional real estate investing sites. So feel free to jump in there. A lot of times we get additional info from different, on different properties and that come up on all different platforms. Also, in the description of this video, I have links to all the places where I'm currently investing in fractional real estate online. Please feel free to use any of those links. Some of them give you free money, some of them don't. Some of them say they give you free money, and they still don't. Just because I invest in the sites doesn't mean that you should. You want to do your own due diligence. But as I mentioned, one of the things he jumped in our Discord, talked about this a little bit. He also has a Discord set up for Saul's Lot specifically. He mentioned a couple of things. One, that they're about halfway through the renovation. In the appraisal that we have, they have a list of, they have an outline of the scope of work of what the renovation is, so you can see everything that's going to be done. And he mentioned they're about halfway through. They already have some of the units up for rent. I did find a listing for one of the units. Also, a little bit more insight. The developer or the investor slash developer who's doing this deal is the same one who did Sarava, which is one of the other properties that I had bought a couple of the DACs. I don't know, pieces of the DAC. I don't know if they're called each one is a DAC or if I'm buying pieces of the DAC. I'm not real sure. I'd have to tokens in the DAC. I guess they're NFTs that I get, but anyway, I'm gonna have to work on the language surrounding that, which how I'm supposed to actually say that. Um, but so Sarava is one that already was bought and sold and redeemed on here that I did well on. You can see from an older video, one of the older videos where I talked about that purchase and due diligence. So the that investor developer is somebody who's Matt has vetted and believes in their capabilities and whatnot. He also knows who the mortgage broker is who's working on the refinance for them, and his says he's going to be getting regular updates. So expects that this will be a relatively quick to complete and refinance. Um, so far this site's been good to me. Uh, I don't mind taking his word for it because I've talked to Matt quite a bit. It doesn't mean that you should, right? Like you want to do your own due diligence. I'd really love it if those details got put on the platform. I mean, it's always great when we get some extra info in our Discord to understand the deal. But that sort of thing on a transaction like this, I'd love to see the info here, right? But it's I do like that he's available when we ask questions. He's always open. He's never. It seems like I've never asked him questions and he'd be like, "Oh, I don't really want to tell you that." Right? He's always giving us answers. Um, but so you can see, you can pull up the appraisal. It's in, you get this little Proton drive when you click on where did I get that? In the Documents tab, right? You click on this tab, open this up. That's what gets you here. Got the same type of performance mortgage. You have this title PDF. Obviously, if you're going to buy into this, you want to look at every single piece of due diligence that they'll give you. I just want to talk about a couple of things. So this appraisal was done 8/16/2025, which kind of lends itself to the idea that the construction should be further along than it was 2 months ago when this was done. They let's see, where are those assumptions? So there is a supplemental addendum. Yeah, this appraisal is subject to the following repairs or alterations, and it says see rehab budget. So that's, if you scroll to the end, you can see everything that they're planning to do. And they're saying once that's all done, we believe it's going to be 390,000. That's what gets us to, that's what puts us at this 65% leverage ratio, right? So let's just look at that 390. Oops. 253. Let's see. 211 is the current mortgage. Oh, it actually looks like we're a little bit higher than that. So because um, we're looking at 52,845. Let's actually do the math there. 52,845 plus. Let's go back here. Right, because we're adding the interest in the DAC um, to the mortgage to kind of get the combined, it's not a mortgage, but the combined um, obligation of the investor. And so let's see, and let's divide that by 390. Okay, 67.76%. Still a very low leverage ratio. I don't know why their math is not quite, I don't know if they're just rounding to the nearest five, or if they were doing something different at first and then didn't adjust that. The interesting question. I don't know the answer to. But okay, if it appraises at the end of the day at 390, and they only have to get a 67.76% LTV in order to cash out the whole thing, right? That seems relatively conservative to me. Doesn't we just got to get to it's pretty easy to get a loan for 75% LTV for this type of property, and depending on the borrower and their experience and what lender they're using, you might be able to even go a little bit higher. So provided they can get to that 390, I feel pretty safe with um, and one of the things I want to remind you is it doesn't matter if it doesn't appraise at 390 in the future. uh, our interest is set, right? What we're getting paid is based on this appraisal for this deal, not if they reappraise it when it's done and get a different appraisal. Like it's not going to affect our in what we actually get paid on this. Um, so let's see. But they also give us the as is value, right? And so the as is value for this one is only 222,000. So that made me really nervous when I saw this, because if you look at the current debt, there's 21, so we're giving them more money than the current debt, plus what we give them is more than the current value. That's when Matt had mentioned, no, they've already been working on it. They're more than 50%, or they're about half done. Um, and so, half done, does that mean they're halfway to this value? Probably not, right? A lot of times when you look at renovations, until you get that, to where you really only have like 10% left, is when you really start to see the full value, right? Because people don't want to tackle a partially renovated property, or they don't give you the full value for that. But it makes me feel it is a riskier deal than a lot of the others that we've seen, right? I'd much rather have that where our leverage ratio is based on as is value. But we are getting the 15%, right? It's not the 8 or the 12 that we've seen in some other deals. So we're getting paid for that. Um, and it is I always want to call them a borrower. They're not really a borrower. But they're the investor is one that we've worked with before, right? If you've invested in the other DAX, but definitely Saul's Lot has worked with them before. Um, there's a lot of things that make me feel like it's worth the risk to me, right? Because if you can refinance this in just a few months and we can annualize our 15% return, you could easily see that be upwards of 50%. If this gets done in 3 or 4 or 5 months. Now, if it takes a lot longer, it's obviously it could be problematic. And if for some reason there's some issues with the business plan and it doesn't, they run into permit issues or whatever it is, there's obviously some risk involved. And it's a little bit different from when we've been looking at the single family homes that really just needed to get prepared for sale and sold, some of which were already. So a little bit different risk profile, but we are getting paid a little bit more because of it. And because of that, I also wanted to look at some of the stuff that we always do, right? Like the FEMA flood map. Flood map looked good here. Looked at the crime map. Does not look great. But we're in Detroit, Michigan. Uh, there's a lot of parts of that city where I think that you see very similar issues. And although there is a lot, I was glad to see we didn't see any shootings in the last few days in this area. But this is only a couple of days that it took to generate this many. So yeah, I didn't love that. Uh, you know, I, this is actually, I was using the street view. You can see this is the 2022 image capture. There's no graffiti. This is actually all the way back in 2009 that this image was captured. So um, I thought that was interesting. I am a little bit curious if this area has gotten better or not. I mean, that was just 2019. This is boarded up. I would really love to get I think they gave us a little bit of information about the market. Oh, nope, they didn't on here. But so I would really like to get us, because this is not just one where I can look up comparable sales for the homes. I think the more you can tell me about the deal and all of that would be better. Which is why it's great that Matt came in, dropped into our Discord and told us a little bit about it. Um, hopefully as things goes on like this, we get more and more detail on the platform itself versus, just hearing it through Twitter or through Discord or wherever it is. Uh, I don't know. I bought a couple pieces of this. I think that the risk return, the way that's weighted, I was happy with it. But it is, a situation where it certainly it certainly doesn't feel as safe as some of the other deals that we've bought or that I've bought on Saul's Lot, right? I did look. This is, there is the listing up for this property. Um, this looks like. This doesn't even, it looks like a different one than the one, let's see all photos. So these are different pictures than the ones we have on here. Oh no, are they not? Where are the other pictures that I saw? Hmm. I thought, oh, they're different than this one. Okay. So this looks unfinished, right? You've got different color cabinets and whatnot, but the one that's listed for sale, where'd it go? Is this one, or for rent? I mean, it's already listed for rent. It looks like this one. Does that look the same as the listing photos? Yeah, I think those might be the same exact photos actually. Um, so this sort of corroborates that story that it's the renovation is partially done. Obviously, maybe they just needed the additional capital to finish it. Um, it does always worry me a little bit when you're in a spot like that where you're, maybe their original plan didn't work out, and that's why they needed some additional capital, or maybe they already went over budget. But again, I mean, that's why we're getting, um, a very hefty return on this. And again, just to remind you that 15% you get paid that, whether it is, so it's a third. We're basically getting a 13% discount on the equity that we buy, and so the way math works, that turns into about a 15% return. Um, we get that, whether it takes a month or 2 months or 4 months or 6 months, and so on an annualized basis, these, the more when we can turn these over quickly, which many of the DACs have been turned over very quickly, they just turn into outstanding returns, and it's one of the reasons why um, I have been doing more limited due diligence on these. Uh, Obviously, it's a platform sort of like how I'm using Ground Floor. If you haven't watched any of the Ground Floor videos, I have a playlist for that as well. Um, because it's such a short-term interest, and it's not a ton of money that I'm putting into each one. Obviously, I do want to do some due diligence, but I think over time I will just learn to trust the platform more and more, because they're vetting these deals, right? Uh, you can see we're already getting some sort of a risk-adjusted return because we're getting a higher return on this one, which obviously seems to be a lot more riskier now, than some of the, like than for example the single-family homes that were already listed for sale. Um, so I don't know. It's such a niche business model. It's different from what we're seeing in any of the other platforms, that I have just been a little bit more. I haven't put a ton of money into it, and it's because it is still very much an experiment. But I've been buying just a little piece of every single one. I'm going to keep doing that, unless I see something that seems like a huge red flag to me, right? And like you could say, well, okay, it's an investment property in Detroit, Michigan, right? Like what more do you need? Well, and it is Section 8, right? Like they're Section 8 approved. Um, some people see that as some additional risk factors. Uh, I have an interest in a couple of, well, maybe just one at this point, rental properties in Detroit that have done perfectly fine for me. It's not as if that whole market, there are people that are operating in that market successfully. But the other thing is, we're not looking at this as a long-term investment in that market, right? All we have to do is get to a point where that property is able to refinance and we're out. And and it doesn't even have to hit that valuation, right? It just has to get to the point where they're able to refinance and there's enough cash to get us out. Um, and we have an operator who's, uh, we already have some experience with and who Matt has vetted, on his own. I don't know. So there wasn't anything in this one that made me really worried, and so I went ahead and bought a couple. And over time, I think that the relationship with the platform grows. It will be, sort of how with Mogul, I just sort of am trusting more and more of what they have to say about different things because, uh, that's the whole point of investing in platforms where you have a real estate professional running the platform, right? And that's how I see this one, right? Matt is, uh, he's been in the real estate business already. He understands, how it works, and he's using, his judgment when he's putting these deals together. Um, Obviously I do want to do my own due diligence and I want to make sure that I can verify whatever I can. And I would, recommend everybody do the same, right? You want to dig into what you can. You want to read all the documents provided. Obviously, take a hard look at that appraisal. Understand what work has to be done. Does it make sense to you, right? Like it's okay. It's $43,000 in work. We're adding $170,000 in value. Is that realistic? Um, to me, I think that it is. But that's I'm not in that market day in and day out, so I can't tell you that for certain. Um, One of the things, a lot of the third party websites, I wasn't actually able to find. They're not giving like their estimates for some reason, and I don't know. I'm not really sure why, but this they did try to sell this one a year ago for 300,000, and it didn't sell. Obviously, that's before this renovation that they're working on, right? So um, I don't know. It is. I kind of struggle with, if you've watched many of my Saul's Lot due diligence videos, it's because it is such a different type of interest. I really think of it, even though we are buying equity, it feels more like we're underwriting a loan. And in this, in most of these instances, underwriting a hard money loan, right? We're getting a return very much in line with if we were a hard money lender or better, actually. And we have the ability to foreclose, right? So we have the ability to exert our interest in that way. Um, and so my real concern is the collateral there, right? And so for this one, where the as is appraisal is so low relative to the current loan and the money that we're putting out, it was really like, oh, I wasn't sure until he mentioned, yes, they're already halfway done with the work, right? And also, he's confident in who they are and that they're going to complete that work. And that's all we need to do, right? We get that done, get some tenants in there, and then we have a refinance. I don't know. I guess that's about it. I'm curious if anybody else has bought some of this one. I did notice a couple people in the Discord or maybe some DMs, people mentioning that they're going to pass on this. They're not. They really don't like the idea of Detroit, small multifamily. They think this is exactly not the type of asset that they'd want right now. I completely understand that. I think that's especially true if we were trying to buy this on another platform where it was going to be a long-term hold. But this is something where we're taking a risk, hopefully for a short period of time, getting a pretty fat return if everything works out. And if it doesn't, then obviously, uh, there's always the risk that we could just lose it all, right? I mean, uh, if there's some, there would have to be a pretty serious failure in their business plan, and be a scenario where it wasn't worth it for those borrowers. I'm just going to call them borrowers, for them to just bring in some extra cash if they weren't able to get a full refinance, right? Like, and I think that's one of the things that there's the potential for that as well. So anyway, let me know what you thought about this one. You feel free to put it in the comments or jump in the Discord. Um, until next time, yeah, I'm sorry. I know this is still, I'm still not 100%, so I apologize for the rambling yet again. But until next time, I'm going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.